I don't think that there's one single empty seat here as I look out. So welcome to Miami Book Fair, and it's truly a pleasure to see so many of you here. I've seen many of you all day long, but we're in for another outstanding session here. I am Malou Harrison, and I want to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Knight Foundation, OHL Arellano, the Grout Foundation, the DeGrout Foundation, and the Batchelor Foundation. I'd also like to acknowledge Friends of Miami Book Fair, our circle of friends. Thank you so much for your support and your ongoing, just really camaraderie here with Miami Book Fair International. Miami-Dade College is the convener for Miami Book Fair, and that has been 3 decades plus of outstanding programming. So thank you to Miami-Dade College. We're going to get right on with the show, and at this time I'd like to bring Mr. Felipe Basulto of TD Bank to the podium, and as many of you know, that is America's most convenient bank, from what I understand. So thank you.
That was paid. Good afternoon, everyone. It truly is an honor and a pleasure to be here today at this incredible event. Miami-Dade College does such an outstanding job. But more so, I get the privilege and the honor of introducing probably one of Florida's greatest treasures. And, you know, I could read a bio, but I firmly believe by the crowd that's here that we all know exactly who Dave Barry is. You know, having a chance of being born and raised here in Miami and really loving Miami, Florida, and in general, it truly is an honor that we have an author who not only gets us, but actually writes it and writes it so well. So I don't want to keep boring you with me because I have nothing to give except an introduction today. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Dave Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for coming out. And thanks to the Miami Book Fair, which is the best book fair in the United States. And yeah. I have an announcement to make. There will be no concert by the Rock Bottom Remainders this year. The people booing never heard the Rock Bottom Remainders before. No, we have played here more than any place else, and which is not really a tribute to this city. No other city will have us that many times. We play, it's a genre we call hard listening music, but it's the logistics. It's difficult to get everybody. People come from all over the country that are in this band, which is why we sound the way we do. We never other bands, I've been told, practice the songs ahead of time, and we don't. We go and play the songs, and then we go, we should have practiced that song, you know, which is not the same thing. But what we do, the reason we're still together after this is 26 years, anyways. The reason we're still together is that we love each other's company. We particularly after we play, we always go out. We go to usually a hotel room or a bar, and we consume adult beverages and talk. And that is usually my favorite part of being in the Remainders, although one time it produced a scary moment for me. This was in New York City, and we had played a gig, and that's a musician term. We played a gig, we had chords in it. Too many chords. And afterward, we went to the hotel bar, and I may have had a few too many vodka gimlets. And I was sitting between Roy Blunt Jr. and Scott Turow, two of my favorite people in the band, and I was always kind of like torn between the two guys. But Scott was telling this really long story about his spleen. Detailed, so to the people, you know, kind of listening, and I was tuning in and tuning out, and I was also talking to Roy and other people, and I kept forgetting whether he had a spleen or not, which was critical to the story. And so I asked him, like, can you just remind me, do you have a spleen? And he goes, no, I don't have a spleen. That's the point of the story. Okay. And then, and then I asked him again. And he was, no, I don't have a spleen. That's the point of the story. Are you listening? No. And then I asked him a third time. And he took a Sharpie and pulled up my sleeve and wrote, no spleen, in big letters on my forearm. But wait. So we all finally finished, go to bed. And we had an early train the next morning to Boston from New York. And I get up, and I'm really not in a great state. And I stagger toward the bathroom, and I catch sight of myself in the mirror. I see there's something written on my arm, which I have no memory of. And I look down, and it says, no spleen. And you know that urban legend where the businessman wakes up in a hotel bathtub packed in ice and his kidney has been harvested? I'm not kidding. This moment of utter terror, followed by confusion because I didn't know where to look. I don't know where my spleen. I don't know where my spleen is, and also then it occurred to me it's not really that vital an organ, the spleen. I mean, I think it's a handy organ, but it's not a vital organ, which is the point. Like, nobody would harvest spleens. You'd have to be in the spleen harvesting community. There's probably an expression: he's so dumb he'd harvest a spleen. You know. So anyway, that was I have a lot more memories of that kind of thing with the Remainers than actual musical ones. But anyway, we're not here this year. Maybe we'll be here next year. I hope. It's kind of hard to get everybody together. So I'm really here to talk about a book I wrote about Florida called Best State Ever, and I am going to talk about that book. But I do feel, because of recent events, that I need to address something that happened. It's got a lot of people down, including me. I'm referring to the fact that last week my daughter got her Florida driver's license. And I don't know how many of you, all of you drive down here. My joke always about Florida has been everybody here drives according to the law of his or her individual country of origin. But it's terrifying when your child is out there, because we're all kind of used to it. But she read the manual. The Florida driver, it's a pack of lies. It says, like, when you come to a stop sign, everybody's going to stop. Not in Miami, they're not, you know. So I wanted to. I wrote an essay for my daughter. It's actually in a book I wrote called "Live Right and Find Happiness," although beer is much faster. And I just wanted to read a little essay. This was dedicated to my daughter when she got her permit in the state of Florida. I wrote a reality-based Florida driver's manual, Q&A. Q, Florida law strictly prohibits texting while driving. Does this law apply to me? A, ha ha, of course not. Q, if I stop at a red light, how will I know when it turns green? A, you will hear honking behind you. This is your cue to start wrapping up your current text, unless, of course, is it important? Q, I have noticed that some roads have more than one lane. What is the purpose of the extra lanes? A, to provide a place for you to swerve into while texting. Q, when I come to a stop sign, do I need to stop? A, you personally? Q, yes. A, no. Q, how is the turn signal used in Florida? A, it is used to indicate to other motorists that you do not realize your turn signal is blinking. Q, could it also be used to signal your intention to change lanes or turn? A, interesting. Nobody has ever tried that. Q, what is the best kind of food to eat while driving? A, any food such as a sandwich, turkey leg, oyster, or ding dong that can be eaten one-handed so you still have a hand free for texting. Q, what if an emergency situation arises that might require me to operate the steering wheel? A, use your forehead to honk the horn until the emergency has passed. Q, my car's engine seems to have stopped and I hear a burbling noise. What could be causing this? A, are you a senior citizen? Q, yes. A, you have driven into a swimming pool. Q, I've had a few drinks. How can I tell if I should drive? A, take this simple test. Are you wearing your underpants on your head? Q, not my underpants, no. A, then you are good to go. Q, what is all that shouting? A, are you a senior citizen? Q, yes. A, you have struck a pedestrian. And I can make senior citizen jokes as I am one now. And let's be honest, we're not all the best drivers. I believe I've told this story before that this is a few years ago, Miami police stopped a 72-year-old man driving a Chevrolet Cobalt, which is that's not that weird, except where they stopped him, runway 9, my international airport. That really did happen. Apparently he burst through a perimeter gate without realizing it and was on the tarmac when they finally caught him, which to me shows a lack of awareness. I don't know about you, but if I'm driving and I notice I'm tailgating a 757, I'm going to say, whoa, I'm not on the Lejeune anymore here, am I? And also we have, again, not to be knocking the seniors, I am one, but the couples that drive by the Seeing Eye Wife system. You know what I'm talking about? It's a couple, the man drives. Why? Because the man drives. Right? Man's been driving for 70 years, but he can no longer see. He has outsourced the seeing to his wife. It was like, it's an arrow. No, it's not turning that way. No, it's that kind of. Anyway. So now I will talk a little bit about the Florida book, and then I'll take questions and we can talk about whatever you want. I have a feeling you know what you're going to want to talk about, although I don't know that we really do anymore. Want to talk about it, but anyway. The book is called The Best State Ever, and I consider myself a Floridian. I lived here I moved to Miami in 1986 from the United States, and no, I've lived here a long time, and I feel immersed in the community. My wife Michelle is Cuban Jewish. She's Cuban. Yeah, they didn't come on rafts. They parted the Caribbean. But I kind of immersed in the culture. I speak fluent Spanish, not the whole language. I can say one thing, which is un momento mi esposa habla español. But I can say that fluently. And I have long been a defender of the city of Miami. And for most of the time I've lived down here, Florida really wasn't the joke. Miami was the joke. People made fun of people. Back from the Miami Vice days, people thought of Miami as dangerous, cocaine cowboys, crazy place, the violent place. I actually had bumper stickers made up once that said, "Come back to Miami. We weren't shooting at you." But which for some reason the Chamber of Commerce didn't adopt, but I still think it'd be a good slogan. But it was Miami. From when I first got here, that people, wow, how could you live there? Not so much Florida, Miami. When Florida, it's this sort of the feeling of otherness began to expand and cover the entire state of Florida was the 2000 presidential election, which when Florida lived up to its motto, Florida, you can't spell it without duh. And those of you who were here then remember it was not a good time to be a Floridian. The other states were able to figure out who they'd voted for pretty quickly, but this completely baffled Florida. Nobody, that night I was up all night. Many of us were. First they called the state for Gore, then they called the state for Bush. Then he said, no, it's Gore again. Then I think for a little while William Shatner was leading the, and. By morning, nobody knew. It was a complete mess, and for the next few weeks, we were the butt of every joke there was, every night, and they kept showing on the news the the elections official holding up the ballots that had been chewed by weasels. We didn't know what these people had done to these things. I at the time proposed it because the problem was Florida voters were unable to successfully poke a hole in a piece of cardboard. That really is what it came down to. And so I at the time proposed that we have a Florida voter-proof ballot, which would be you would print photographs of the candidates' faces on the ballot, and you would vote by poking out your candidate's eyeball. Well, another great idea that nobody took me up on. So anyway, that was when we became the joke state, and we are to this day the joke state. I think you're probably all familiar with the Florida Man thing. Florida Man. There's this website called Florida Man. It's devoted to just weird stories out of Florida, and there are so many of them. It's almost impossible to believe. But every day, I was going to read you. These are actual Florida Man headlines. Florida man poses as Superman on side of road while pantless urinating. Knife-wielding Florida man tries to rescue imaginary girlfriend from garbage truck. Florida man says he danced on patrol car in order to escape vampires. Florida man seen masturbating into stuffed animal in Walmart bedding department. Florida man shoots sister in butt with BB gun because she gave him a penis-shaped birthday cake. And those are all real headlines, and that's just every day of the year, over and over again. Year to year, Florida we do produce an amazing amount of weirdness. My statistic is we have 6% of the nation's population and produce 57% of the nation's weirdness, which is a statistic, right? You can quote it. And the thing that bothers me about that, and one of the defenses I mount in the book, is that yes, this is going on. There are just more weird stories happen here than happen in other states. I think pound for pound, nobody's going to dispute that. But it isn't necessarily Florida's fault. And I will give you an example of why I say that. This is a story, true story, that you may remember when it happened. It was international news, went viral, and it happened in Florida. What happened was and this involved a woman, not a man. The woman was driving south on the overseas highway going to Key West. And she was, according to the Florida State Police Highway Patrol report filed on this incident later, she was in a hurry because she wanted to see her boyfriend in Key West. And she wanted to look good for him. And this is all, again, according to the police report. So she decided to shave her bikini region. Now, some people would have pulled over to the side of the road. But as I say, she was in a hurry, so she decided to keep driving, operating the accelerator, but let the steering be done by her passenger, who was, and this is one of the things that makes this a Florida story, her ex-husband. I'm not making any of this up. This is a true story. So they're going southbound at about 45 miles an hour. She's operating accelerator but not looking at the road because she's shaving her bikini region. He's steering, the passenger, ex-husband. What could possibly go wrong? In a 1 in a million fluke, the car in front of them elected to slow down to make a turn. And they slammed into it at 45 miles an hour. And that was the accident that became international viral news. When that was great, kid, everybody was like, do you believe the woman who was shaving herself? Here's the thing. That woman was from Indiana. She was shaving her Hoosier. If you wondered all this time what that word meant. But my point is, Florida gets the blame. Florida, weird. But this is true of many of these stories. People like a guy decides to pleasure himself in a stuffed animal in the bedding department of Walmart. He's not going to go to Ohio to do that. He's coming here, okay? We are Ellis Island for these people, okay? So so there's that. That's part of my defense, is that like many of the people doing these things are not really from here. No, very few people are really from here, let's be honest. And there are some wonderful things about our state. We have terrific weather down here, except during hurricane season, which runs from June through the following June. How many of you got taken in by Matthew this year? And I was holding out because I'm so used to this, same drill. It's coming here. Yeah, right. It's coming here. It's coming. No, really, it could. It's gonna, don't everybody be calm, but this could kill you. So you're staying calm. And finally, they keep showing the cone and the thing and even though it's not coming here because it never seems to come here, you just have to go to Publix. This is a true story. My wife and I both went separately to Publix. We both just couldn't stand it anymore, And all the other, people in Publix buying things they don't need. My wife came home with 9-volt batteries, and I said, "We don't have anything that uses 9-volt." And she goes, "Well, that's all they had," But other than that, the weather here is lovely. We love it. The taxes here are low. We have no state income tax here, which is one of the reasons, that's probably why 2/3 of you are here right now. No state income tax. And okay, what kind of government do we get for that? Wait. We get incompetent and corrupt government. New York has really high taxes. They also have incompetent and corrupt government. So does California, New Jersey. We're getting incompetent, corrupt government for way less, is the point I'm making here. But most of the book is, in fact, a travelogue, a love letter to the state of Florida. A lot of people, when they come to Florida now, they go, to them that means they land at the airport in Orlando, they go to one of the big theme parks, they go back to the airport and they go home, and that's Florida. That's their visit to Florida. And that is part of Florida. But there's a lot more to Florida than that. And I wanted to write about it, a kind of a charmingly weird kind of Florida, an older Florida. So I asked a bunch of people I know, many in journalism, tell me some places to go to. One of them was Tim Dorsey, who's here at this very book fair, kind of a student of the state. And I made a list of places that are very Florida, some old, some new, just different and unlikely to exist in another state. And I went to those places and wrote about it. And I went to each of I ranked they mostly are tourist attractions, and I ranked them on a scale of 1 to 5 out-of-order mold-o-matic machines. Have you ever seen these machines? Back in the, probably in the 50s, some guy went around and sold these things to every tourist attraction in Florida. These giant, they look like jukeboxes, and you feed money in. Now it's $2, I think, and nothing happens because they're always out of order. I did find one that works, and it hisses and it steams. It's a pneumatic, and and it produces what looks like a ball of mucus, shaped like a mermaid or a turtle or whatever it is. It's the stupidest thing ever. So I love it, and I went every place I went. I would almost always find an out-of-order mold-o-matic machine, but that was my ranking system. And mostly I went to tourists. I talk about some of the other things you can see in this state. One of my favorite, you may have seen this, at the Wildwood exit of whatever that highway is. I can't even remember, maybe the Turnpike. There's a giant billboard. It's one of these souvenir stores. And it says, and it's been this way for years, it says, wind chimes, gator heads. How many times have you said to yourself, I need a wind chime and I need a gator head, but I don't want to make 2 stops, That's what that billboard is there for, But I went to, let's run out some of the place. I went to the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. Anybody ever been there? No. It's like Route 41. If you ever drive to Naples on Route 41, you've driven past it a million times. On the side of the road is the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters, which is it sounds like a laboratory. It looks more like a tiki bar frequented by motorcycle gangs, but the skunk ape is this alleged creature kind of like Bigfoot that lives out in the Everglades. And nobody has seen ever, except for the guy who runs the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. No, Actually, some people claim to have seen it. We don't know how drunk they were when they did, but so I went out there and I never did see the skunk ape. I did purchase a really nice skunk ape research headquarters t-shirt for my wife, which she appreciated. I went to Weeki Wachee. Anybody here ever been to Weeki Wachee? Okay, now we're talking. Weeki Wachee is a real old school Florida tourist attraction. Started in 1947 by a guy named Newton Perry. Newt Perry, who was a famous underwater swimmer back in the day. He was actually coached the guy who swam in The Creature of the Dark Black Lagoon. You know, I don't think he was actually in the rubber suit, but which is a movie about it. So people who are attacked by a guy in a rubber suit. But Newton Perry could hold his breath forever. He could hold his breath for 8 minutes underwater, and he could perform stunts underwater, like he could eat an apple underwater, which makes sense because after a few minutes down there, you get hungry. But he converted this spring up in Weeki Wachee, this gushing underwater spring, into an underwater theater with a plate glass window, and mermaids. They're women wearing rubber tails, come swimming up, and they swim in front of you, and they breathe through air hoses occasionally, and they drink beverage and eat an apple underwater. And this was a big deal in the 50s and 60s. This was one of the biggest tourist attractions in the state. And then along came Disney World and just wiped out these places. Although Weeki Wachee is still there. But I mean, if you think about kids, you say to your kids today, hey kids, you want to go see Harry Potter, or do you want to go on Space Mountain, or should we watch women in rubber tails eat an apple underwater? Kids, we don't. These kids today, you know. But Weeki Wachee is still going as a state park. Your tax dollars are paying for Weeki Wachee, which they're also paying for Rick Scott. So you decide how you feel about that. I went to a place called The Villages. Yeah. Where there's wild sex going on day and night. Senior citizens having sex. Actually, there isn't. That's like, there's one guy wrote a book, and in it he has one chapter where this guy brags about he has sex a lot up there. And it just drove America crazy, the idea that senior citizens, by which I mean people my age, are actually having sex. Whoa! You know? So there's like 300 magazine articles written about The Villages, all of which mention sex and STDs in like the first paragraph. So I went up there and spent a couple of nights. There's line dancing, is what's going on up there. There's a tremendous amount of line dance. I thought, I kind of like The Villages. I don't personally want to live there, but it's kind of charming because, you know how like if you go to a wedding nowadays, and there's like younger people and older people, and they start to play like old person music, like Jeremiah was a wolf, and all the old people get out. And all the kids go, like, this place is nothing but these people. No young people laughing at them. So it's like they're enjoying themselves up there. They have a few inexpensive cocktails. They get in and do line dances, and nobody makes fun of them. And I kind of found it charming. I liked The Villages. I went to Gatorland. Anybody been to Gatorland? Home of the Gator Jumperoo. I gave it 3.5 out of order Mold-O-Matics. That's how impressive. This is where they dangle chickens over the water, and gators come up and snatch them out of, and tourists cheer like crazy. You know, it's stupid, but I liked it a lot. I went to a place, Lock and Load, Miami. I don't know where you can rent machine guns, and I rented a machine gun, and I went to a place, Lock and Load, Miami. I don't know where you can rent machine guns. And I rented a machine gun, and I wet my pants. Not really, but I was too scared to wet my pants. You know, they let me have a machine gun, but you know, there was a big, strong man right behind me, ready to punch me senseless if I did anything stupid. So I went to Live nightclub, and let me just say, nobody in this room could get in. Because it's like this impossible to get into hot nightclub. I got in because I pulled strings, but if I had tried to get in the right way, which is by standing in line and trying to look young and attractive, you know, years from now they would just be my corpse there, you know, like skeleton, you know, still waiting to catch the eye of the bouncer through my eye sockets, you know, that were eyeless. Anyway, went to Key West with a friend of mine. Tried to drink all the beer in Key West in one weekend, and we came close. We came mighty close. But the one I wanted to read you a little bit of one essay I wrote about what I think was probably the most interesting and weirdest place I went in the state of Florida, which is a town called Cassadaga. So some of you are familiar with Cassadaga. A round of, let's hear it for Cassadaga. Cassadaga is a community of spiritualists, mediums, and psychics. So when you drive in, it's this little kind of out-of-the-way little town. And I went there the week before Halloween, which is the creepiest time to go there. And you drive back into this little road, and every house has a sign outside, psychic, mediums. It's like if you needed, if your water heater blew up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get no help. But if you needed an emergency tarot card reading, help would be minutes away. And I stayed at the Cassadaga Hotel, which is a really creepy hotel. With the shower it was the psycho shower in my bathroom. I was afraid to go to the bathroom in my own hotel. And anyway, I wanted to get a tarot card. I mean, not a tarot, reading from a psychic. So I went, and the way you do it, there's a spiritual center there, and they have a whiteboard where the psychics and mediums have written their names and phone numbers, and there's a phone right there that you can use to call, and there's also a cash machine right there because a lot of psychics don't take credit cards, turns out. And it says to decide which psychic or medium you should use your intuition. So I'm going to just read you about my reading. Using my intuition, I start at the top of the list. After getting several voicemail machines, I reach a live medium, whom I will call Judy. She tells me she just had a cancellation, so she has an availability right away. She says the session will last 30 to 45 minutes and will cost $60 in cash. Following Judy's directions, I walk a few blocks to a small house on a side street. Judy, a woman in, I'm guessing, her 30s, ushers me through a kitchen into a darkened living room where candles are burning and New Age music is playing softly. She has me sit on a sofa. She sits on a chair in front of me with a small table between us. Judy tells me a little about the history of Cassadaga and explains that she is a trained medium affiliated with the spiritualist camp. She says she doesn't use tools such as tarot cards. In Cassadaga, the mediums who claim they can communicate with the dead tend to look down on the psychics who use cards, crystals, and other items, and who claim they have the ability to see into the future along with other powers. Judy produces a sheet of paper and says she will be writing down things as she goes. So I'll have a record of our session. She writes my name in large letters on the paper and begins talking. As she speaks, she often looks past me as if she's seeing a spirit I can't see. Sometimes she talks to the spirit. Thank you, she'll say. Judy says she's seeing canisters and asks if that has any significance to me. I try to think of canisters that have been significant in my life. But nothing comes to mind. To be honest, I can go for months without thinking of canisters. Judy says it might have something to do with oil or an auto shop, and that placement is important. She goes on for a while talking about the placement of the canisters, but it's not ringing any bells. I'm starting to feel bad, like I'm letting Judy and the spirit community down. Judy says she's seeing the number 76. I rack my brain, but all I can come up with is the song 76 Trombones, which is a rousing show tune, but not one with which I feel a deep personal connection. I shake my head. Judy says she's picking up something about bowling balls and brings up placement again. I shake my head again. I'm not a bowler. I am totally failing at this. Judy asks me if I have trouble eating. I wish, I say. This is turning into a nightmare. Judy says she's getting something about a woman who maybe has something to do with race cars. I shake my head again. My wife happens to be a woman, and she's a fast driver, but not of race cars. She's an SUV woman. I begin to think the dead people Judy's talking to have me confused with somebody else. Then Judy says she's getting something about a turkey. About turkey. The bird or the country, I ask. The bird, she says. I like turkey, I say. Judy seems pleased. Finally, we're getting somewhere. Judy says she's getting something about music. I tell her I'm in a band. This is true. I'm in an author rock band called the Rock Bottom Remainders. We are not good at music, but we do attempt to play it. Judy asks about the name Ron. I tell her my wife's cousin's husband is named Ron. We are on a roll now, spiritually. Then Judy brings up my parents. Have they transitioned, she says. Have they what? I say. Died, she says. I tell her they have in fact transitioned. She asks me if I would like to try to contact them via a spirit box, which she says is a device that enables the dead to communicate with us. I say sure. She goes to a closet and brings back a small electronic device, which she connects to a tiny speaker. She explains that the spirit box picks up radio transmissions, and the spirits piggyback on these transmissions to say things to us. She tells me she's going to record me asking some validating questions to prove that it's my parents I'm connecting with. Speaking into the spirit box, I ask a few questions like where my parents were born and what street I grew up on. Then we go through a process wherein Judy plays back my questions, and we both listen intently to the spirit box, trying to pick out messages from beyond as the box emits static, random sounds and fragments of radio broadcasts. To you, this probably sounds like a load of hooey. But I can state for a fact, as a person who witnessed it firsthand, that you are absolutely correct. It is a large, steaming, fragrant pile of hooey. I have a hard time keeping a straight face. Judy would say, "Did you hear that?" And I'd say, "What?" And she'd say, "It sounded like, 'love you, listen.'" Then she'd play a staticky random sound that could have been "love you," but also could have been trampoline, fester, dirigible, Neil Sedaka, Montpelier, or pretty much anything else. And I'd go, huh. We do that for a while, Judy hearing my parents telling me that they're happy being dead and they love me hearing static. Finally, mercifully, our session ends. I pay Judy and leave with a piece of paper on which she has written notes about canisters, placement, etc. As I walk away, I find myself thinking about my parents. They both had excellent senses of humor, and they would have been immensely entertained by the spirit box. So I guess in a way, Judy did connect me with them. It was totally worth $60. Anyway. Thank you. So, it's a little bit about my book. I will now entertain your questions, and it can be about anything. It really doesn't, I have a feeling I know that some of the topics might come up. Or if you have a problem at home you'd like to share with the group, we're here for you.
When you first moved here from the United States, did you have any major experience of culture shock?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest shock really was the driving when I got here. I mean, I already knew about, that there would be a lot of people speaking Spanish. That didn't bother me. I didn't mind. But I was not prepared for the idea that a person who missed an exit on an interstate would back up. To make that turn. So that is still in a way the part that I find hardest to do. But I love Miami. Most of what shocks people I find funny most of the time. But yeah.
Thank you. I haven't heard you speak about traffic circles. They're proliferating. Now in a place like England, roundabouts work because people respect. Here it seems to be, I dare you to hit me, and the other car says, I double dare you.
Yeah, only Miamians would make traffic circles into a hostile thing. But I think there are people who just wait until you're close and then go out into the... Well, the people that I don't get are the people that go into the traffic circle and then stop. I understand if you stop before, you're confused. You don't know what it is. There's a lot of things that are confusing to people. Like down here, people, I've seen this so many times, they're in a lane that's got a giant arrow pointing left, and above it says left turn only, and then the light goes on with a green arrow pointing left, and they think, what the hell do we do about this situation? Let's wait for a few more cycles while we think, that I'm used to. But why would you stop in the traffic? Once you've already gotten into the traffic circle, anyway. I agree with you is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
But they go the wrong way in England, admit it. Okay, they're going that way in England, which would work here, I think. I'm going to try that. Just going to go into the circle and just turn left instead of right and see what happens.
You work for the Miami Herald, and I love...
Thank you for pointing that out, but yes.
You're welcome. And when you go on to their online site, you click on news, there's a menu that says, like state, international, local, and then weird.
Sorry, CNN, you know.
Was that your idea?
No, but it makes sense. You have to admit, it makes a ton of sense.
Would you care to expound upon the subject of low-flow toilets?
Low-flow toilets, God. We used to have great toilets in this country. We had powerful toilets. We had toilets that were the envy of the world. We had toilets that could suck down a mature sheep. And then some idiot in Congress passed a law, we're going to save water with these toilets that don't work. They flush them like 8 times to get a ping pong ball to go down. And if you're seeing a ping pong ball in your toilet, you probably should see your doctor also. But thank you for asking. I'm opposed to them. I favor the death penalty for whoever is responsible for them. The only thing I feel really strongly about is that, and I was running for president on this, I apparently didn't win. That's what I'm hearing, you know. I think that we need for the medical profession to find a way to get to the prostate gland other than the way they're getting to it now. Who's with me? Men, who's with me on that? We got a procedure where the doctor stands 85 yards away and goes, looks good from here, Dave. Because men hate that procedure. My doctor, because you're like tense. You know, the doctor hates it, you hate it. They always wait to the end of the exam because they're kind of hoping there'll be a nuclear war. You know, and the bad news is that, you know, civilization destroyed. Good news, we don't have to do that. You know, so they always wait to the end. And my doctor's now, maybe even in this room, I don't know. It's Curtis Hamburg. He's a wonderful doctor. But the first time I had a physical with him, and we get to that moment, and I'm turning around, my pants are down, he's putting on the glove, you know. And I'm all tense. And here's what he said to relax me at that moment. He said, you know, Dave, when you should feel really nervous is when you feel both my hands on your shoulders. All right. That is not my joke. That's my doctor's. That's Curtis Hamburg's joke. Yeah. Sorry. Hi.
Hi there. My father works for a newspaper and writes a column.
But your father works where?
He works for a newspaper.
Okay.
He's the editor of our local newspaper in Vancouver, Washington. But I wanted to ask what you thought of the column as like a form of writing and where that's going in the next generation.
Your dad's a columnist?
Yes.
It's a great thing. No, I fear it's, you know, not to bring everything down, but you know, the way journalism's going, there's just less and less space. It's harder and harder to get a column into a paper anymore. There's a lot of great writing on the internet and stuff, but it's harder and harder to make it a living on as a newspaper columnist. There's just fewer and fewer of them. But I'm sure your dad will be fine.
Why won't you run for governor?
I think that's a wonderful note to end our session on. Let's give a round of applause. David Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Autographing area on this floor on the other side of the elevators. You can purchase Dave Barry's book and get it autographed. Thank you.